What's up everyone, it's Dakota and welcome back to another modern video, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Amulet Titan deck piloted by Jeffrey Higgs, who took it to a 4th place finish at the Apex Gaming Invitational, going with a 5-1-1 record. I know watching the Apex series and whatever, a lot of the streams were done by Apex Gaming themselves, not really any of the other stores that are involved in the circuit. It's a great circuit, it's fun, I've gotten to participate in a few events. Really great thing that they got going on. Hopefully season 3 is even bigger than what season 2 was. But I know Jeffrey was very successful with this deck, so we're going to be taking a look at his list today and just kind of breaking down some of the important bits of it, and maybe in the future, maybe later this week, playing some matches and stuff with it to kind of check it out in action. Before we get too deep into the deck, of course, if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you're interested in modern deck techs, pioneer deck techs, gameplay of the same formats, and any other general essay type videos that I post on my channel, please be sure to subscribe, ring the notification bell so you know when those videos go live. Also, there's two links in the description of this video. One goes to my Twitch channel, so if you want to try to catch me live, maybe going over some of the Mana Traders events, like playing live. I sort of kind of did it for the first few rounds of the modern one, so maybe we'll play this month if we, get a decent amount of followers, whatnot. There's also a link in the description to the Discord server that I run, so if you want to have any interest in joining that, go ahead and follow the link there as well. So Amulet Titan has this game plan, and the game plan has essentially been the same for years. The only thing that really changed is bannings, like we've had Field of the Dead being one of the lands that you could win with this deck, essentially just getting to make a bunch of 2/2 zombies, and you want to play lands anyway, so the fact that you got additional value from playing lands is really good. This one, choosing to win with Valakut the Molten Pinnacle. When a mountain enters the battlefield under your control, if you control at least 5 other mountains, Valakut does 3 damage to target creature or player. I believe it's errata to any target. This is just the cool art for Valakut. So essentially, you have a second wave winning, which you have Valakut plus Dryad Elysian Grove. It makes every land, every basic land type in addition to other types. So it's kind of like Prismatic Omen, as you would see from some of these decks and some of the Scape Shift decks that kind of try to win with Valakut. Um, they call it Amulet Titan for Amulet of Vigor and Primeval Titan. So these two work very well together. Amulet says whenever a permanent enters the battlefield tapped under your control, you untap it, and it's a trigger. So if you have 2, 3, 4 amulets in play, your bounce lands, or your they call them Karoo lands, like Gruul Turf, Selesnya Sanctuary, Simic Growth Chamber. There's also another one, which is the Golgari Rot Farm and Boros Garrison, all come into play untapped, and then they also will add 2 additional mana for each amulet you have. So if you have 4 amulets in play, each one of these bounce lands creates 4 mana. Of course, you still have to return a land to your hand, but with these cards, 99% of the time, it's correct to just play it, get your mana out of it, and then bounce it back so then you can continue to generate more mana. Because obviously, with more amulets in play, you're going to generate more mana. The big thing that you're trying to get to, obviously, is Primeval Titan. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, search up for 2 land cards, put them on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. A lot of the when you have an amulet in play, you can Titan as early as turn 2 with certain draws. Like turn 3 normally with an amulet is kind of normal without any additional ramp, I would say. And usually when you have an amulet, the play is play a Titan. You end up getting not Sunhome. You end up getting Slayer Stronghold plus Boros Garrison, which Boros Garrison these will untap. Garrison will get to add a red and a white. Slayer Stronghold will also untap. You'll be able to give the Titan haste and vigilance, and then you'll be able to attack with it, and then kind of go from there. Some of the usual lines, you'll see people get to Talaria West and Simic Growth Chamber. If you have the option for more amulets in play, if you have 2 or 3 amulets in play, you're just able to immediately go get Talaria West and Simic Growth Chamber, transmute Talaria West into a Summoner's Pact, and then go get another Titan, and then continue to kind of do the same thing, and then eventually you'll be able to get a Slayer Stronghold, give both or multiple Titans haste and attack, and get more lands. And normally probably just that attack ends the game. Your opponent really doesn't have a whole lot they can do against that, but even if they do, you can get like Urza Sagas to eventually get some more like amulets or just make a ton of like construct tokens. You're able to get like Valakuts to set up like future Dryads so that land drops end up just getting to hit your opponent for 3. Michelson's Garden, while not nearly as explosive as like Urza Saga or like Valakut in terms of like ending the game, Garden can, unlike the early turns, just copy an amulet. Like you can play an amulet on turn 1, turn 2 you could play a garden and then copy an amulet, and then from there, you end up having like 4 mana per bounce land, pair with like an Azusa or like a Dryad, and like you're casting a Titan on turn 3, and then again, like I pointed out earlier, you're able to go get like Simic Growth Chamber, Talaria West, transmute to get another Titan, and then play an additional Titan, and then haste both of them up and just kind of end the game on the spot. Obviously, the deck needs some kind of redundancy. I mean, like you have a Boreal Grazer to put multiple lands into play. Grazer is like a way that you can play this kind of fair way of playing Amulet Titan, just getting up to 6 mana naturally by like playing a forest, play a Grazer, put a bounce land into play if you have like multiple bounce lands, just getting to put another land into play as well. But like pairing this with like a bounce land when you have multiple ones just allows you to like play the forest and then like play an Azusa, and then you're able to like play bounce land, play a land, and then get up to 6 mana that way. Getting to pair with like Dryad as well, like just these two cards giving you additional land drops. Azusa being the better of the two because you can obviously play 2 additional lands versus 1 additional land, but Dryad have the upside of getting to pair well with Valakut the Molten Pinnacle, and just kind of giving you, eventually like this inevitability of getting to burn out your opponent that way if you're not able to win with Titans. There's Cultivator Colossus, which usually plays a one of. I've heard apparently pretty controversial, but I think now solidly at least a one of staple for this deck. Power toughness equal to the number of lands you control. When it enters the battlefield, you put a land from your hand onto the battlefield, and if you do, draw a card and repeat the process. Now, you don't get to put a bounce land into play and then like in between repeating the process, like return it to your hand and then just get to draw a bunch of cards. But essentially, Cultivator Colossus allows you to turn all the lands that you draw eventually into spells, which means that you could draw more copies of Primeval Titan, backup copies of like Dryad, maybe like Arboreal Grazer, like in conjunction with a Dryad. It's usually pretty good just to get the extra land drops for like Valakut. You can end up getting like a Pact of Negation or like Summoner's Pact to then go fetch up Titans to then continue to do your thing. Really, a lot of these spells you're a big fan of like having. Obviously, some better than others, but getting to turn like maybe the 4 or 5 lands that you have in hand into like 5 spells, and of course thinning out your deck as well. Because then you could have the potential of drawing more lands. You are playing 33 of them. You know, is pretty good. Um, so continuing on, like those are like the 27 spells that you actually play in the deck. And with the game plan, like you actually have like Talaria West that can transmute for like lands or like packs. You have like Primeval Titan that can search up lands. Cultivated Colossus that's just gonna dump a ton of lands into play. Allows you to play a lot of like utility lands. So of course, we went over like the different Karoo lands, like they all kind of like combo in their own way. Rot Farm really just being here as like a way to make double green. It's a bounce land that makes green mana, so you can cast like Primeval Titans and all of your other like green spells and stuff. But we see a Bajuka Bog in here. Like you can definitely like hose some of like the graveyard decks just by you know getting to again like playing multiple lands because of your creatures or from like Primeval Titans, so just getting to like search this up is pretty good. You have some Besagus. Paired with like a bounce land and stuff, you're able to go get like bounce land plus Besaju, float mana, and then like Besaju, a problematic permanent that your opponent might have. You have Cavern of Souls to make your Titans unblockable or uncounterable. Excuse me. You have Slayer Stronghold, obviously, to give your creatures like haste. They also get a little power buff. Sunhome Fortress of the Legion is a way that you can like essentially end the game. With 2 amulets in play, you're able to make a single Titan, a 10 power thing. Because if you have 2 of them in play, you're able to like untap Garrison and Slayer Stronghold 2 times. So it'll give your creature +4/+0, Vigilance and Haste. And then Sunhome, you're able to double strike it thanks to a copy of Vesuva, copying the Boros Garrison that is in play. So essentially, that's a way that you can get like a 10/6 double strike Vigilance Haste threat that can end the game if your opponent doesn't have any blockers or can't put enough toughness in front of it to stop them from dying. And with Modern being a format with like fetches and shocks and you know the Saga, or not the Saga decks, the Underworld Breach decks, the Hammer's probably a deck that you're going to have a hard time like killing this way. But aside from that, like it's a real possibility that your opponent dies on like turn 2 or turn 3 with like a double amulet draw. We mentioned Michelson's Garden just being a way to like make additional copies of Amulet. Talaria West transmutes to find a land that you need or just get like a summoner's pack most of the time, just because this is a way to essentially get multiple copies of Titan, and it's very hard for a lot of decks to beat one Titan, let alone two or three. Urza Saga is a way that you can get additional value, searches up an amulet or gets an expedition map to then search for one of these lands that you need, maybe like bounce land to make a bunch of mana, Cavern of Souls to make Titan Titan uncounterable, excuse me, and of course just like getting to make the constructs when you're already putting like additional constructs plus all these amulets and stuff in play makes them very big and also hard for your opponent to deal with. Of course, we talked about the two Valakuts as like additional win conditions when paired with Dryad of the Elysian Grove. Vesuva just gets to copy everything. I mean, like you can make a third copy of like Valakut and then just nine your opponent that way with a Dryad in play. On top of that, again, like the play that we mentioned before, where you're able to have a double amulet draw, give Titan +4/+0, and then able to Slayer or Sunhome the Titan to then kill your opponent that way. Sideboard looks like an additional copy of Beseiju and like Cavern of Souls for those particular like pesky matchups. You have Dismember as essentially catch-all removal for a lot of the relevant threats in the format. A Boreal Grazer is really good against like the Ragavan type decks. I mean, being an 0/3 with Reach, it does get to block a Delirious Dragon Rage Chandler once. It forever blocks a Ragavan, and they need additional removal to get through an Arboreal Grazer if they have like a Ragavan in play, which isn't necessarily difficult, but it does cause them to use resources to beat a card that you already got like a ton of value out of, and of course like getting to block, a reasonable amount of threats. Also, the fact that your opponent can't, your hammer opponent can't do the trick of like activate an Ink Moth, put a hammer on it, and then like activate it again to give it flying to lose like the debuff essentially from the hammer. You are able to block it with Arboreal Grazer. You have like endurances for like additional like graveyard threats. You have tireless tracker as like a way to generate value from playing a ton of lands that isn't with Dryad, and of course like paired with like bounce lands and uh, an amulet, you're able to just like play a land and essentially like draw a card or whatever, and just kind of keep doing that. Tyler's Tracker is going to get really big, and just like another threat your opponent has to deal with. And even if they do, you have like three or four uh, tokens in play, like you're able to just cash those in for cards later. Force of Vigor, one of the best 2 for 2s that you can get in Magic. Just it's awesome, especially when you can like Stone Rain your Hammer opponent and things like that by getting like their Hammer or like their Sigarda's Aid and a Urza Saga. Thrumbreaker's Silence and Tyrannix Rex are two new cards from the newest Phyrexia set. Thrun being uncounterable, trample, can be the target of non-green spells your opponents or abilities of non-green sources your opponent controls, and it's indestructible as long as it's your turn. So like really like short of like Supreme Verdict and things like that, you're never getting rid of a Thrun. This is just going to be a complete thorn in the side of like control decks. And Tyrannix Rex can't be countered. Trample, Toxic 4, Ward 4, Haste. 7 mana 8/8, like Trample Haste is just really, really good. And it's probably going to end the game just being an 8 power attacker faster than it's going to be the Toxic 4. But, if your opponent's able to make like a ton of tokens or put like big creatures in front of it, there's really not going to be much that's bigger than this. And eventually, your opponent has to soak up all the damage or it's going to get slowly toxic out of the game that way. Also, the fact that you need to pay 4 additional mana for this card to get rid of it, and like Unholy Heat doesn't deal with it, so you need to pay like 10 mana for like 2 Unholy Heats to deal with it. It's just very annoying card to like deal with, and especially again as like against control decks, which I know a lot of this meta like people like playing those like control decks and stuff like that. That this was definitely a good pick. And so that is the Amulet Titan deck for Modern. All in all, like this deck, as I believe I alluded to in the intro. Maybe it was part of the other one when I tried to record this, but Amulet Titan is a deck that has kind of stood the test of time through bannings. Summer Bloom was like the original card that got banned, and everyone thought, well, it's not going to be nearly as explosive, and they were right. But at the same time, we're five 5 to 7 years like after I believe the initial banning of Summer Bloom. Maybe it's even longer than that. I think it's like 2015. So like 8 years ago. And people are kind of right, but now this time we're still getting turn two and like turn three Titans, with a lot more consistency. You're definitely not goldfishing for the perfect draw. Like this deck does have a few more outs to like drawing, 2 to 3 copies of Amulet going off, and then just like, if not killing your opponent, really making it super difficult and having very specific answers that people really don't often play in the format to actually deal with them. So definitely looking forward to getting in some games with this deck. I have a little bit of experience with it, not this version in particular, but from just my forays, if you will, into playing the deck. So if that is something that interests you, of course, let me know in the comments of this video. And if you enjoyed this video and you're not already subscribed to the channel, please be sure to subscribe, ring the notification bell so you know when videos like this get posted. Remember the 2 links in the description of this video. Go ahead and check them out. I would greatly appreciate it. That's going to do it for me in this video. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope to see you all in the next one.